Hour number 2 of the Ron Potesta Show. Welcome into this Wednesday edition. So last night, the 45th President of the United States, Donald Trump, had to be smiling like a butcher's dog, if I can steal Mike Lang's lingo, as his candidates, the candidate that he endorsed for the Republican nominee for United States Senate, he came through. Joining me to talk about that and the rest of the Ohio primary, we bring in Fox correspondent Sean Themea. Sean, a great night if you're a Donald Trump fan, and his name continues to have a lot of power in a red state like Ohio.
Ron, I completely agree. I mean, I think this race really showed two primary things. One is that the Trump bump, still has a huge impact. There were doubters saying that Trump's endorsement would be a nothing burger, but if this is a bellwether for the rest of the 2022 cycle, then I think it goes to show, the Trump bump still matters. I think it also goes to show with J.D. Vance's victory that at the end of the day, the American people still want their elected politicians to care more about the American people and their needs than they do, what's going on in Eastern Europe. J.D. Vance was the only candidate who said in earnest that we should have no American involvement in Ukraine, no troops, no funding, that we should actually hold D.C. accountable to issues that actually focus on working Americans. And so I think those two things shined through last night with that win.
Sean Themea, Fox News correspondent, joining me on the hotline. Sean, it's interesting. When J.D. Vance was campaigning prior to the endorsement from President Trump, he was an afterthought. He was in fourth, and some polls had him in fifth place. And then Donald Trump gives his blessing to J.D. Vance, which surprised a lot of people in the Buckeye State. I would have thought Josh Mandel, who is the closest person politics-wise to Donald Trump, would have gotten that endorsement, but instead Donald Trump endorsed J.D. Vance, and as soon as he was endorsed, J.D. Vance went right up the charts, and he wound up winning. And frankly, Sean, he won going away. He convincingly beat Josh Mandel by 8.5%.
Yeah, it's great to see, and I think a big part of why Trump chose that endorsement, despite what some people may have been giving lip service to in terms of their beliefs, comes down to authenticity. Vance is not a career politician. He came in, he said, hey, I care about these ideas. I admit that, hey, look, I was wrong about you, Trump, but here we are, we're on the same team now. And I think that, that authenticity and that earnestness goes a long way.
Sean, how surprised were you when J.D. Vance, look, when Donald Trump was president first year or two, J.D. Vance wasn't a fan. He went out of his way to talk bad about Donald Trump, but he took all of that back. How surprised were you that Donald Trump would endorse a guy that pretty much talked a lot of smack about him in the early stages of the Trump presidency?
Yeah, well, I think Trump put it best at his rally. He said, look, this guy talked a lot of smack about me, but you know what? They all did. And so I think when you line that up, when you can pull back anti-Trump statements about each of these candidates had made at some point, it becomes a little less surprising. And it comes down again to, I think, in earnest, Vance's core values are most in line with Trumpism, putting America first. Than any of these other candidates could have said in earnest. So with that in mind, I think he made the right call, and I hope that Vance can beat the Dem in the general.
Fox News correspondent Sean Themea joining me on the hotline now. J.D. Vance will have his hands full in November. Tim Ryan, it's a name that is too familiar for those of us that live in the Mahoning Valley. He is a longtime congressman. His district included most of Mahoning, all of Trumbull, and parts of Geauga County. He is a very popular figure within his party, but he's also a lightning rod for the Republican Party as well. This should be a very entertaining race in November.
I think so, and I think that it would serve to remind voters of just how poorly this guy did in the presidential elections in 2020. I mean, he was one of the, couple dozen candidates who tried to take out Trump. He was barely polling at 1% after the first two debates. He had that incredibly embarrassing moment in the one of the first debates with Tulsi Gabbard, where he tried to say that the wrong people attacked us on 9/11. I mean, how out of touch can you be and still try and be a U.S. senator? So I think there's ample fodder here to hit him on. But most importantly, that he's not going to put the American people first. There's no guarantee he will, compared to someone like Vance, who has hammered that message home over and over again.
Sean Themea, Fox News correspondent, joining me on the hotline. The other message that was taken out of last night's Ohio primary, Governor DeWine may not be as well liked by his party as one would assume. Yes, he did get the victory in the Republican primary, but he had to work. He only got 48.1% of the votes, and if you added up Renacci and Blystone's numbers combined, they were more than Mike DeWine. How concerned should Mike DeWine be going into the November race against the Democrat, Nan Whaley?
I think you should be concerned, and I think that, he made his bed and he's going to need to sleep in it when you think of the fact that he was one of the governors who didn't come right out and say, you know what, these lockdowns are wrong, these mandates are wrong. And the voters are not going to be forgiving of the governors who instituted COVID restrictions, especially when people knew right from the start, hey, the data's not really in. I'm not sure these are going to work. And at a minimum, it is morally wrong to take away, A, the right for someone to earn a living and put food on the table, and B, to have one man in the governor's mansion subject an entire state to forced masking. I mean, these things are wrong. DeWine was no DeSantis, and Republican voters shouldn't necessarily reward him for that. They got to put the pressure on him.
Sean, having said that, in November, do you see the conservative and far right portion of the Republican Party essentially staying home as their way of protesting this coming vote in the election in November?
It's possible. It's possible, and if that happens to DeWine, I mean, he's got no one to blame but himself. So we will see what happens.
Sean Themea, Fox News correspondent, thank you so much for joining in this morning, sir.
Good to be here.
You got it. Sean Themea, Fox News correspondent, reporting on last night's Ohio primary. And again, Otis, Donald Trump's name, it continues to ring loud and clear in the Buckeye states. J.D. Vance was an afterthought before the endorsement. He was polling in fourth and fifth place. Once he got that endorsement, he won, and he won convincingly, Otis.
Well, it appears that way, and I mean, obviously the Trump endorsement helped, and I think that swayed some voters. There's a lot of people out there that still believe that President Trump is your president. If you look at the way the 2020 election, you have the people that say that the vote was stolen, just like the Democrats said it was stolen in 2016.
Yeah, I think it's time to get off of that thought and move toward 2022, which, if you're in the Republican Party, you need to think about taking over the House of Representatives and taking over the Senate and making it the biggest red wave as humanly possible. All right, we're going to take a time out. On the other side, we'll open up the phone lines, get your reaction to a J.D. Vance night, courtesy of the president, the former president, Donald Trump. 800-624-1170. Your calls are next. Stick around. More to come.